My sister sent my fiancé a fake pregnancy report claiming it was hers, causing him to call off our engagement. She had no idea I'd been secretly paying her college tuition and covering all the household expenses for years. That day, I ended every form of support, cut her off completely, and walked away without looking back. Can you imagine the gut-wrenching feeling of discovering your own sister's pregnancy report was a complete, calculated lie, just minutes before your wedding rehearsal dinner? It was a moment that ripped the veil off years of hidden truths, exposing a betrayal so deep, none of us were prepared for the fallout. I'm Scarlett, I'm 30, and that night changed everything. My sister, Stephanie, had the audacity to dramatically announce pregnancy complications, to hijack my spotlight. That's when I dropped the bomb. I knew her secret. The smug smile plastered on her face instantly vanished when I mentioned the words, financial control. The entire family gasped, because what they didn't know was that I had been secretly funding Stephanie's entire lavish lifestyle for years. Shock, betrayal, confusion. I still remember everyone's faces that night. Before I tell you how everything unfolded, where are you watching from today? This family drama taught me that karma eventually finds everyone. So, if you've ever experienced family betrayal, hit that subscribe button and like this video. Trust me, you'll want to see how this revenge story ends. Growing up, Stephanie and I had what looked like a typical sister relationship on the outside. She was years younger than me, and always treated as the baby of the family. Even long after we were both adults, I don't think my parents ever saw how their obvious favoritism twisted our relationship, or how it chipped away at my self-esteem throughout childhood. From elementary school onward, I was the responsible one, the achiever. I'd help with chores without being asked, pull straight A's, and join every extracurricular activity I could possibly cram in. Meanwhile, Stephanie could do no wrong in our parents' eyes. She'd throw a tantrum when asked to clean her room, and eventually they'd just do it for her. She'd fail a test and they'd blame the teacher. The pattern was crystal clear. I had to earn every single bit of praise through sheer hard work, while Stephanie just received endless adoration simply for existing. Scarlett, you're the older sister. You need to set an example. My mom would say that phrase to me every single time I dared to complain about the unfair treatment. That line became the soundtrack of my childhood. A constant, nagging reminder that my feelings always came second to Stephanie's comfort. Despite the glaring lack of parental support, I somehow excelled academically. I earned a full scholarship to an Ivy League school, where I dove deep into computer science and business. My parents came to my graduation, but honestly, they spent most of the day talking about how Stephanie was struggling with her college applications, effectively minimizing my achievement. Stung. After college, I joined a tech startup as one of the very first employees. Those early years were brutal. 80-hour work weeks, sleeping under my desk sometimes, practically living on ramen just to save money. But the sacrifice, it paid off. By 26, I was the chief technology officer. And by 28, when the company was acquired, I walked away with enough money to never work another day in my life if I chose not to. Ironically, my financial success coincided with my parents' business crashing and burning. They'd owned a small but once successful retail store for 20 years. But a toxic cocktail of poor decisions, an economic downturn and brutal competition from big box stores left them teetering on the edge of bankruptcy. They didn't even tell me directly. My father was far too proud. The truth hit me like a gut punch when my mother called, her voice choked with tears, because they couldn't make their mortgage payment. That night, I made a decision that would change our family dynamic forever. I would help them, but it had to be a secret. I didn't want them to feel like failures, and honestly, I really didn't want Stephanie to know I had money. She'd already shown concerning signs of jealousy every single time something good happened in my life. When I brought my amazing boyfriend, Mark, home for Thanksgiving that year, Stephanie's behavior was especially revealing. Mark was successful in his own right, a talented architect with his own firm. More importantly, he was kind, intelligent, and treated me with a respect I hadn't always found. The moment Stephanie met him, I noticed a palpable shift in her demeanor. Her laugh became louder, more pronounced. She touched his arm repeatedly during conversations and managed to casually drop her single status into the conversation at least 5 times during dinner. "Your sister seems nice," Mark said afterward, completely oblivious to her overt flirtation. That was Mark, always seeing the best in people. "She can be," I responded vaguely, not wanting to taint his impression with my complicated feelings. By this point, I had already set up the intricate financial arrangement that would later explode into our family drama. Through a labyrinth of shell companies and trusts, I was quietly paying my parents' mortgage, their car payments, their health insurance, and their credit card bills. I'd also set up a fake scholarship for Stephanie's college tuition, and was paying for her apartment near campus. None of them had a clue the money came from me. My parents genuinely believed they qualified for some special financial assistance programs, and Stephanie thought her scholarship came from some anonymous alumni foundation. My reasoning? I wanted to help them without fundamentally altering our relationship dynamic, without becoming the family ATM, and most importantly, without having to endure my parents praising Stephanie for receiving financial help, while I'd busted my butt for everything I ever had. Looking back, I can see I was enabling unhealthy patterns instead of fostering genuine growth within my family. But at the time it felt like the kindest, most dignified solution. I was preserving their pride while ensuring they were cared for. What I didn't realize was how my carefully guarded secrecy would eventually collide with Stephanie's simmering jealousy, creating the perfect storm that very nearly destroyed us all. The acquisition of our tech company wasn't just successful. It was the kind of exit that makes headlines in industry publications. Our small team had developed this incredibly innovative algorithm for data processing, something a major tech giant simply couldn't resist. When the dust settled, I found myself with a net worth of over $12 million before my 30th birthday. I moved a chunk of the money into conservative investments, donated to causes I cared deeply about, bought a comfortable but not extravagant house, and set aside a significant portion for my family's needs. I wasn't flashy about my wealth. I still drove the same Honda I'd had for years and lived well below my means. Few people in my life knew about my financial situation, and that's exactly how I wanted it. When I first truly understood how dire my parents' business situation was, I was floored. They were 3 months behind on their mortgage, credit cards maxed out, and they'd taken out predatory loans just to keep their store afloat. The sheer burden of this knowledge was overwhelming. These were the people who had always presented themselves as financially savvy, who had lectured me about responsibility while indulging Stephanie's every whim. Miss Preston, are you sure you want to structure things this way? My financial advisor, Thomas, asked when I laid out my plan to help them anonymously. Family financial entanglements can get complicated quickly. I'm sure, I insisted. They can't know it's coming from me. Thomas helped me create several perfectly legitimate legal entities that would serve as buffers between my money and my family. We established a trust that appeared to be from a distant relative, a cleverly disguised fake scholarship fund for Stephanie, and a business grant program that would mysteriously select my parents for assistance. The paperwork was all legitimate. The sources of funding were all me. Within weeks, my parents received a letter informing them they'd been approved for a special refinancing program that would magically reduce their mortgage payment by 60%. Another letter arrived offering a business stabilization grant. And Stephanie? She received notice that an anonymous donor had selected her for a full-ride scholarship that included tuition, housing, and a generous monthly stipend. The change in their lives was immediate and honestly dramatic. My parents stopped looking stressed at family dinners. Stephanie moved from her cramped dorm room into a luxury apartment near campus. Their gratitude, it was all directed at faceless institutions and lucky circumstances, never ever at me. For a while this arrangement seemed perfect. I could help my family without altering our relationship dynamic. But cracks, oh, they soon began to appear. Despite having her education and living expenses fully covered, Stephanie started dropping classes. By her junior year, she was barely enrolled part-time, though she'd confidently tell our parents she was focusing on her major courses. I, of course, received the real enrollment reports from the university as the scholarship provider. More concerning was her pattern with relationships and jobs. She'd date someone for a few months, stir up some drama, break up, and then spend lavishly to heal her broken heart. She'd land a job, work for a few weeks, inevitably clash with management, quit or get fired, and then take months to find another position. All while maintaining her luxury lifestyle, thanks to that generous scholarship stipend I provided. When Stephanie maxed out her first credit card at 21, I received a desperate call from my mother. "Scarlett, I hate to ask, but your sister is in a bit of trouble financially. We helped as much as we could, but with the store still recovering." I pretended to contribute a small amount, while actually paying off the entire card through my financial network. This pattern repeated itself several times over the next few years, with the amounts growing larger and larger each time. When Mark proposed after 2 wonderful years of dating, I was ecstatic. We planned a wedding for the following spring. Nothing ostentatious but beautiful and incredibly meaningful. My parents insisted on contributing, so I subtly arranged for them to receive an unexpected insurance reimbursement that they could use for wedding expenses, effectively allowing them to pay with my money while preserving their pride. As wedding planning progressed, Stephanie's behavior became increasingly erratic. As my maid of honor, she was involved in many aspects of the planning, but it felt like she was sabotaging at every single turn. Appointments were mysteriously rescheduled without my knowledge. Deposits went missing. Vendor communications were accidentally deleted from her phone. I tried to attribute these incidents to Stephanie's general disorganization, but a pattern was emerging that I simply couldn't ignore. One night, while reviewing my financial monitoring systems, yes, I had those, I noticed unusual withdrawals from Stephanie's account. She had visited an urgent care clinic and made several purchases at a medical supply store. Around the same time, I found evidence she'd been researching pregnancy symptoms, medical terminology, and how to create fake medical documents. A cold sense of dread washed over me. I immediately increased the monitoring on her accounts and communications, justifying the invasion of privacy with my rapidly growing concern. What I discovered was worse than I ever imagined. Stephanie wasn't just jealous of my wedding. She was actively, maliciously plotting to ruin it. Wedding planning should have been one of the happiest times of my life, but Stephanie managed to turn it into a minefield of stress and doubt. As my maid of honor, she had access to every aspect of the wedding, which in hindsight gave her ample opportunity for sabotage. The first red flag fluttered just 3 months before the wedding, when I arrived at the florist for a consultation, only to be told my appointment had been rescheduled for the following week. Stephanie had called, claiming to be my assistant, and changed it without telling me. When I confronted her, she feigned the most innocent look. "Oh, I thought I told you. I must have forgotten to text you after they called me. Wedding brain, right?" She laughed it off, but something in her eyes didn't match her carefree explanation. It was unsettling. A week later, our venue called in a panic because they hadn't received the deposit to secure our date. I distinctly remembered giving Stephanie a check to deliver during her lunch break, since the venue was near her apartment. The check had been cashed, but somehow the money never reached the venue. Stephanie claimed there must have been a mix-up at their office and oh so generously offered to handle it. I later discovered she had deposited the check into her own account and used my money to make a down payment on a new car. "It was just a timing issue with my account," she explained when I confronted her with the bank records. "I was going to transfer the money to them this week." I chose to believe her, writing it off as Stephanie's typical financial irresponsibility rather than outright malice. Looking back, I was willfully blind. The engagement party provided even more evidence of Stephanie's true intentions. Mark's brother, James, pulled me aside during the celebration. "I don't want to cause drama," he said uncomfortably, "but I think you should know your sister has been texting Mark pretty frequently." He mentioned she kept asking him to meet for coffee to discuss wedding surprises for me. Mark confirmed this when I asked him privately, showing me the increasingly flirtatious messages from Stephanie that he had been politely deflecting. He hadn't mentioned them because he didn't want to create tension between us. "I thought she was just being friendly," he said, looking genuinely troubled. "Should I be worried?" "No," I assured him, though worry was beginning to gnaw at me. "I'll handle Stephanie." When I confronted her about the messages, she burst into tears, claiming she was just trying to make sure Mark was good enough for me. Her performance was convincing, complete with trembling lips and wet eyes. I almost believed her, until I noticed she was checking her reflection in a nearby mirror to see how she looked while crying. That was my breaking point. Around this time, Stephanie began dropping hints about mysterious doctor appointments and vague health concerns. At first, she was coy about the details, leaving hints like breadcrumbs for the family to follow. "Oh, I don't want to worry anyone," she'd say at family dinner. "But the doctor wants to run some additional tests. It's probably nothing." My mother would instantly launch into a full-blown panic, demanding details and offering to accompany Stephanie to every appointment. My father would grow quiet, his face etched with worry. The attention would remain fixed on Stephanie for the rest of the evening, any mention of wedding plans completely forgotten. During bridesmaid dress fittings, Stephanie created another scene by claiming she needed a larger size because she was retaining water due to her medical condition. When the seamstress, bless her heart, suggested simple alterations instead, Stephanie became tearful. "You don't understand," she whispered loudly enough for everyone to hear. "There might be a reason I need extra room in a few months if you know what I mean." The other bridesmaids immediately swarmed her with questions and congratulations, despite Stephanie's theatrical insistence that it was too early to say anything definite. I watched this performance with growing suspicion, noting how her eyes constantly darted to gauge my reaction. My doubts continued to multiply, but family loyalty, foolishly, kept me from voicing them. Then the universe decided to intervene. I found Stephanie's diary while helping my parents clean their attic. I knew I shouldn't read it, but when I saw Mark's name and my name repeatedly mentioned, my curiosity completely overrode my ethics. The entries confirmed my worst fears. Scarlett always gets everything. The perfect grades, the perfect job, the perfect fiancé. Mom and Dad pretend to be proud of me too, but I see how they look at her. Now she's having this big wedding while I'm still single. It's not fair. But I have a plan that will make everyone forget about Scarlett's perfect day. By the time I'm done, all anyone will remember about this wedding is me. Another entry detailed her chilling research into creating fake medical documents and her plan to announce a pregnancy, then complications, during our wedding festivities to steal the spotlight. She'd even practiced her concerned but brave face in the mirror. I should have confronted her immediately, but a part of me simply couldn't believe my own sister would go this far. I needed more evidence. And unfortunately, Stephanie was about to provide it. As the wedding week finally arrived and family gathered from across the country, Stephanie's health concerns intensified. She had clearly scheduled her dramatic revelation for the rehearsal dinner, where she would have the largest, most captive audience. I watched her preparations with a growing sense of both dread and icy determination. She had no idea that I knew her heinous plan. Nor did she realize how much power I actually held over her life. The stage was set for a confrontation that would rip our family apart, and then hopefully somehow put us back together. The night of the rehearsal dinner, I slipped a folder of financial documents into my purse. Irrefutable evidence of my years of quiet, secret support. If Stephanie wanted to play with fire, she was about to learn that I controlled the whole damn forest. Our rehearsal dinner was held at the Belmont, an upscale restaurant with a breathtaking private dining room overlooking the city skyline. Mark and I had chosen it for its intimate atmosphere and exceptional food. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm, inviting glow over the long mahogany table where 40 of our closest friends and family gathered. The room hummed with conversation and laughter as everyone enjoyed cocktails before the meal. I should have been savoring these precious moments, but my attention was glued to Stephanie, who was acting increasingly bizarrely strange. She kept checking her phone, stepping away from mysterious calls, and whispering conspiratorially with one of her friends who wasn't even part of the wedding party. She'd chosen to wear this form-fitting dress that really emphasized her midsection, which she kept rubbing absently, making sure everyone noticed. "Are you feeling okay, Stephanie?" my mother asked loudly enough for nearby guests to hear. "You seem uncomfortable, sweetheart." "Oh, I'm fine, Mom," Stephanie replied with a brave, sickly sweet smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Just a little tired, the doctor said. I need to rest more in my condition." My mother's eyes widened, and she instantly launched into a hushed but animated conversation with Stephanie. I watched them from across the room, noting how Stephanie strategically positioned herself so most guests could observe their apparently private discussion. Mark approached, handing me a glass of champagne. "Everything okay? You've barely smiled all evening." "Just wedding nerves," I lied, not wanting to ruin his night with my chilling suspicions. "I'm going to check on the seating arrangements." Instead, I watched Stephanie like a hawk until she finally put down her phone to visit the restroom. The moment she disappeared down the hallway, I made my move. Her designer purse sat unattended at her place setting, her phone on top, still unlocked. I knew I had perhaps 2 minutes before she returned. My heart pounded like a drum against my ribs as I quickly picked up the phone, feeling like a thief despite being in pursuit of the truth. A text conversation with someone named Jess was open on the screen. "Stephanie. Jess, the fake report is perfect. Doctor's office letterhead and everything." Jess. "OMG, are you really going through with this?" Stephanie. "Hell yes. The announcement tonight. Then complications during the ceremony. All eyes on me. Not Miss Perfect." Jess. "What if someone calls the doctor to check?" Stephanie. "No one would dare. Besides, I'll have a miscarriage after the honeymoon. Perfect timing to ruin their return." Jess. "Your sister will hate you forever." Stephanie. "She'll get over it. Besides, she has everything else. I deserve one day where people care about me." My hands shook with a combination of white-hot rage and crushing heartbreak. I quickly scrolled through more messages, finding photos of the forged pregnancy documents and chilling details of her plan to fake crying spells and eventually, a dramatic collapse during our vows. I quickly took photos of the entire conversation with my own phone, then returned Stephanie's phone exactly as I found it. When Stephanie returned, our eyes met across the room. I maintained a neutral expression, but something in my gaze must have alarmed her because she quickly looked away and busied herself talking to one of the groomsmen. Dinner was served, and as coffee and dessert arrived, my father stood to make a toast. Just as he raised his glass, Stephanie dramatically placed her hand on her stomach and gasped. The timing was impeccable, interrupting the father of the bride moments before he could praise his daughter on her special weekend. "I'm so sorry," she said, her voice carrying perfectly across the now silent room. I wasn't going to say anything this weekend because I didn't want to take attention away from Scarlett and Mark, but she paused for maximum effect, tears welling in her eyes. I've been having some complications with my pregnancy. The doctor said I need to take it easy, but I wanted to be here for my sister. The room erupted in concerned murmurs. My mother rushed to Stephanie's side while my father stood frozen, his toast forgotten. Mark looked at me in confusion, clearly wondering if I'd known about this supposed pregnancy. I felt a strange, cold calm descend over me as I stood up, wine glass still in hand. The room gradually quieted as people noticed me preparing to speak. "Thank you for your concern for my sister," I said, my voice steady, betraying none of the turmoil within. "But I think we should clarify something. Stephanie, would you like to tell everyone the truth about your pregnancy, or should I?" Stephanie's face paled, but she recovered quickly, her eyes narrowing. "Scarlett, I know you're upset about the timing, but this isn't about you for once." I smiled tightly. "You're right. It isn't about me. It's about you lying to everyone in this room. There is no pregnancy, is there, Stephanie?" Gasps echoed around the table. Stephanie's expression hardened. "How dare you? Why would I lie about something like this?" "To ruin my wedding according to your text with Jess," I said, holding up my phone, displaying the damning screenshots I'd taken. The fake doctor's report was a nice touch. Very convincing letterhead. Stephanie's face contorted with rage, but then unbelievably, it shifted to a smug smile. "You went through my phone. That's a new low, Scarlett. Always the perfect sister, right? Well, at least I don't pretend to be something I'm not. Everyone thinks you're so successful, but you're just a pathetic control freak who can't stand when someone else gets attention." It was the moment I'd been waiting for. I reached into my purse and pulled out the folder I prepared. "Speaking of control," I said quietly, the words dripping with ice. "Did you ever wonder how you could afford that luxury apartment on part-time retail wages? Or how our parents magically recovered from near bankruptcy 5 years ago? Or where your scholarship came from after you failed half your classes?" Stephanie's smug expression finally faltered. My mother made a small noise of distress. "Scarlett, this isn't the time," my father began, but I cut him off, my voice rising slightly. "Actually, this is exactly the time. For years, I've been funding this entire family. The mortgage on your house, Dad. The business recovery grant, Mom's medical bills, Stephanie's apartment, her car payments, her credit card debt, and the scholarship that mysteriously never required any academic performance." I opened the folder and placed several documents on the table. "It's all here. Bank transfers, shell companies, trust arrangements. I own the company that owns your house. I'm the anonymous donor behind Stephanie's scholarship fund. I've paid off her credit card 7 times in the last 3 years." The room had gone completely, utterly silent. Mark was staring at me in shock. This was news to him as well. My mother had collapsed into her chair, one hand covering her mouth. My father stood rigidly, his face ashen. Stephanie's expression shifted from confusion to dawning horror, as she slowly processed what I was saying. "You're lying," she whispered, but her voice completely lacked conviction. "The pregnancy report isn't the only fake document in this family, Stephanie. The difference is mine were created to help you, not hurt you." I turned to address our stunned guests. "I apologize for this family drama. Please enjoy the rest of your evening. Mark and I look forward to celebrating with you at our wedding tomorrow. Assuming we still have one after all these revelations." As I walked out of the dining room, I heard Stephanie begin to sob. Real tears this time, not the performative ones she perfected over the years. Part of me felt terrible for exposing her this way, but a much larger part, felt an overwhelming sense of relief. The suffocating web of lies I'd been maintaining for years had become its own trap. And maybe, just maybe, this painful truth was our only way forward. Did your family ever hide important secrets from each other, thinking it was for the best? I genuinely thought I was protecting everyone, but keeping all these financial arrangements secret just set us up for an even bigger explosion. If you're still with me at this halfway point, drop a comment about whether you think I should have revealed everything earlier, or if you've ever had to make a difficult choice to protect your family. This story is about to take an even more intense turn that I never saw coming. After I left the rehearsal dinner, I drove aimlessly for nearly an hour, ignoring the constant buzzing of my phone. Mark finally reached me with a text that simply read, "I'm at your place whenever you're ready to talk. No pressure. I love you." His simple, understanding message broke through my emotional numbness. I drove home to find him waiting on the porch swing, 2 glasses of wine beside him. When I sat down, he didn't pepper me with questions or judgments. He just put his arm around me and waited. "I should have told you," I finally said, the words catching in my throat. "About the money, about all of it. Yes, you should have, he agreed quietly. But I understand why you didn't. Scarlett, I've watched how your family treats you for 2 years. You're the responsible one, the fixer, the achiever who never gets the same praise or attention as your sister. You found a way to help them without becoming their ATM or changing how they see you. It wasn't honest, but it was kind in a complicated way. His deep understanding brought fresh tears to my eyes. What happens now? I whispered. That depends, he said, looking at me. Do you still want to marry me tomorrow? Despite everything, I laughed, a raw, shaky sound. That's the only thing I'm still sure about. Mark smiled and squeezed my hand. Then we'll figure out the rest together. My moment of peace was interrupted by my phone ringing again. My father, for the 12th time. I finally answered. We need to talk, he said, his voice grave. Everyone's at the house, including Stephanie. The emergency family meeting was as uncomfortable as I expected. My parents' living room, the very house I'd secretly been paying for, felt suffocating. My mother sat rigid on the sofa, eyes red from crying. My father paced by the fireplace. Stephanie was curled in an armchair, looking smaller than I'd seen her in years. Explain everything, my father demanded the moment I walked in. From the beginning. So I did. I told them about the company acquisition, the money I'd made, discovering their financial troubles, and my elaborate, misguided plan to help without changing our family dynamic. I explained the shell companies, the fake scholarship fund, the business grants, and all the times I'd secretly bailed out Stephanie. Why didn't you just tell us? My mother asked, her voice breaking. Why all the deception? Would you have accepted my help? I countered, my voice laced with years of frustration. Would it have changed how you treat me compared to Stephanie? Or would I have just become the family bank while still hearing about how special and precious she is? My father flinched at my words. We don't favor. Dad, please, I interrupted, the dam finally breaking. My entire childhood I heard, why can't you be more like Stephanie? When it came to being sociable. But never, why can't Stephanie be more like Scarlett? When it came to responsibility or achievement. I paid for her apartment while she dropped out of classes, and you still praised her for her independence while asking why I worked so much. An uncomfortable, heavy silence filled the room. Finally, Stephanie spoke. I didn't know, she said quietly, about the money, any of it. That was the point, I replied. But why? Why help me when I've been so awful to you? Because you're my sister, I said simply. And because I thought if I removed the financial stresses, maybe our family could just be normal. Stephanie slowly unfolded herself from the chair and walked to the center of the room. I need to tell you all something, she said, her voice steadier than I expected. Scarlett's right about the pregnancy. I faked it. I was going to pretend to have complications during the ceremony tomorrow. She swallowed hard. But that's not all. I also contacted Mark's ex-girlfriend and invited her to object during the ceremony. And I've been trying to get Mark's attention since the day they got engaged. My mother gasped. Stephanie, how could you? Because I'm jealous, okay? Stephanie's voice rose, raw and unfiltered. I've always been jealous of Scarlett. Everyone thinks I was the favorite, but being the favorite just meant no one expected anything from me. Do you know what it's like living in the shadow of someone like her? Perfect grades, perfect career, perfect fiancé. I'm a college dropout working retail at 26. And now I find out I couldn't even manage that without my big sister secretly funding everything. Her raw honesty stunned me. For the first time, I saw my sister not as my rival or the family favorite, but as someone who'd been damaged by the exact same family dynamic that had hurt me, just in a completely different way. My father sank into a chair, suddenly looking every one of his 63 years. We failed you both, he said quietly. Scarlett, we put too much responsibility on you and took you for granted. Stephanie, we didn't give you the structure and expectations you needed to thrive. My mother wiped her eyes. What happens now, Scarlett? Will you keep supporting us? The naked anxiety in her question confirmed what I'd always feared, that financial support was the only real value I had to them. Before I could answer, Mark spoke from the doorway where he'd been quietly observing. I think that's the wrong question, Mrs. Preston, he said gently. Maybe the first question should be how to rebuild trust in this family, not who's paying for what. I'd never loved him more than in that moment. The wedding is postponed, I announced, my voice firm. Mark and I will decide later if and when we reschedule. As for financial support, I took a deep breath. It stops today. All of it. But the mortgage, my father began, his voice strained. You have 2 months of payments left in the account. That's enough time to figure out your next steps. You can't just cut us off. My mother protested, her voice rising. I can. And I am. Not to punish you, but because this arrangement isn't healthy for any of us. I've enabled dependencies that have stunted our growth as a family. My pronouncement was met with shocked silence. Stephanie was the first to recover. She's right, she said, surprising everyone. This isn't normal or healthy. I need to stand on my own 2 feet for once. In the days that followed, our extended family immediately took sides in the conflict. Some cousins thought I was cruel for cutting off support, while others praised me for finally establishing boundaries. I started seeing a therapist to process my incredibly complicated feelings about my family and my own role in creating the unhealthy dynamic. Mark stood by me through it all, never judging, always supportive. One night, as we discussed whether to reschedule the wedding or just elope, he offered an insight that would completely change my perspective. You know what's interesting about your family? He said. You've all been living according to a script about who you are, the responsible one, the favorite, the struggling parents. But none of you chose those roles. You inherited them and never questioned them. So what do we do? I asked. Rewrite the script, he said simply. All of you. With that thought firmly in mind, I approached the task of rebuilding my family relationships, not as the responsible big sister or the secret benefactor, but simply as Scarlett, figuring it out one day at a time. 1 month after the rehearsal dinner revelation, the full impact of the financial reckoning hit my family like a tidal wave. Stephanie received an eviction notice when she couldn't make her rent payment. Her car, which I'd been making payments on for years, was at risk of repossession. My parents, who had been living in a house they couldn't possibly afford and maintaining a lifestyle far beyond their actual means, faced the harsh reality of their true financial situation. I maintained my distance but stayed informed through Mark, who had unexpectedly become the unofficial family mediator. He reported that my parents were arguing constantly about money, my mother wanting to ask me for help, my father insisting they needed to solve their own problems for once. Your dad's looking at retirement account options, Mark told me after having coffee with my father. And your mom is researching how to sell the house themselves to avoid realtor fees. And Stephanie? I asked, trying to sound casual. She's applied for 7 jobs in the past week. Actual full-time positions, not just retail. I felt a complex mix of emotions. Guilt for their struggles, pride that they were finally taking action, and lingering hurt from years of family dynamics that had led to this painful breaking point. After 6 weeks of separation, I agreed to meet my parents for lunch at a modest diner, their choice, which in itself signaled a profound change. My mother had lost some weight, and my father's hair seemed grayer, but they both greeted me with genuine warmth rather than the tense formality I'd expected. We've been working with a financial advisor, my father said after we ordered, creating a realistic budget based on our actual income, not supplements. We should have done this years ago, my mother added, her voice tinged with regret. We're selling the house. Found a nice condo that's within our means. I nodded, surprised by their pragmatic approach. That sounds sensible. Scarlett, my father said, leaning forward, his gaze earnest. We owe you an apology, not just for taking your money without knowing, but for all the years before that. We placed too much responsibility on you and gave too little structure to Stephanie. We see that now. We've started family therapy, my mother added. All 3 of us. We'd like you to join when you're ready. Their humility and newfound self-awareness caught me completely off guard. I'd expected defensiveness or manipulation, not genuine accountability. After lunch, Mark suggested a compromise that truly surprised me. What if you set up a proper, transparent financial arrangement? Not secretly funding everything, but maybe helping with specific things with clear boundaries. Like what? I asked, intrigued. Like offering to help your parents with a down payment on the condo as a gift, not a secret payment. Or helping Stephanie with tuition if she goes back to school, but with clear academic requirements. The idea had merit. It would allow me to help my family without enabling dependency or fostering resentment. After careful consideration, I called a family meeting at Mark's house, neutral territory, to discuss the path forward. Stephanie arrived first, looking noticeably different. Gone were the designer clothes and perfectly styled hair. She wore jeans and a simple blouse, her hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. I got a job, she announced without preamble, at Westfield Architecture. Mark's friend Carlos hired me as an office manager. That's great, I said, genuinely pleased. How is it going? Hard, she admitted, a small, weary smile playing on her lips. I've never had to be somewhere at 8 a.m. every day, actually accountable for things, but I kind of like it. Having structure, I mean. My parents arrived next, bringing a thick folder of financial documents. We've worked out a budget, my father explained, based solely on our income and the equity we'll get from downsizing. And we'd like your input, my mother added. Not your money. I reviewed their plans, genuinely impressed by their thoroughness. The condo they'd found was modest but nice, and their new budget accounted for all necessities while eliminating the luxuries they'd grown accustomed to. This looks solid, I said, returning the folder. I'd like to make a proposal, though. I outlined a limited support plan. A one-time gift to help with a condo down payment contingent on them sticking to their budget, tuition assistance for Stephanie if she returned to school contingent on maintaining AB average, and a small emergency fund for true family crises administered by an independent trustee. This isn't an ATM arrangement, I clarified. These are specific supports with clear boundaries and expectations. To my complete surprise, my father shook his head. We appreciate the offer, Scarlett, but we need to do this ourselves for now. Maybe revisit in a year when we've proven to ourselves, as much as to you, that we can be financially responsible. Their refusal of my help was perhaps the strongest evidence that real fundamental change was occurring. As we continued talking, another revelation emerged, one that stunned me even further. Stephanie had been stealing from our parents for years, taking cash from their wallets in business, secretly contributing to their financial problems. I'd convinced myself they owed it to me, she admitted, not meeting anyone's eyes. I never thought of it as stealing. The admission hit me hard. All this time, I'd been secretly supporting everyone, and Stephanie had been secretly undermining that support. The dysfunction ran deeper than I'd ever realized. After the meeting, Stephanie asked to speak with me privately. We walked to a nearby park, sitting on a bench overlooking a small pond. I hit rock bottom last week, she said, watching ducks glide across the water. Got down to my last $20. No credit, no savings, nothing. I even went to a pawn shop to sell Mom's bracelet that I'd borrowed. Did you sell it? I asked, my heart aching for her. She shook her head. I couldn't go through with it. That's when I realized how far I'd fallen. Ready to sell a stolen family heirloom for cash. I walked out and applied for jobs all day instead. Her vulnerability cracked something open in me. For the first time in years, maybe ever, we were having an honest conversation without pretense or competition. I never wanted to hurt you, she continued. Not really. I just wanted what you had. Not the money, but the confidence, the certainty. You always knew who you are and what you want. I laughed softly. That's the biggest myth about me. I've been terrified and uncertain plenty of times. I just didn't show it. Why not? She asked. Because I was the responsible one, the achiever. That was my role. And I was the screw-up, Stephanie said quietly. The eternal child who couldn't be trusted with responsibility. We sat in silence, contemplating how we'd both been constrained by these rigid family-assigned identities. I found your journal, I admitted. That's how I knew about the fake pregnancy plan. Instead of anger, Stephanie looked relieved. I'm glad you did. I don't think I would have had the courage to stop myself. As the sunset painted the sky in vibrant oranges and pinks, Stephanie reached over and took my hand. I'm sorry, Scarlett, for everything. I want to be better. Not like you. I'll never be like you, but a better version of me. I squeezed her hand. I'd like to know that version of Stephanie. Walking back, I realized Mark was right. We were rewriting the script, creating new possibilities for who we could be as individuals and as a family. The process would be messy and imperfect, but for the first time in years, it felt authentically ours. 6 months after the dramatic rehearsal dinner revelation, I stood in the small dressing room of a beachside venue, adjusting my simple white dress. Mark and I had decided to move forward with a much smaller, more intimate wedding. 40 guests instead of 200, a local restaurant reception instead of a hotel ballroom, wildflowers instead of elaborate arrangements. You look beautiful, my mother said from the doorway. Our relationship had transformed over the past months. Without the secret financial ties, and with the help of family therapy, we'd begun developing a truly more honest connection. She was learning to see me as a complete person rather than just the responsible one. And I was learning to share my vulnerabilities with her. Is Stephanie here? I asked, trying to sound casual. My mother nodded. She's helping arrange the chairs on the beach. She's nervous about seeing you. Stephanie was not in my wedding party this time. That trust would take longer to rebuild, but I had invited her as a guest, a crucial first step toward healing. The changes in our family over those 6 months had been remarkable. My parents had sold their large house and moved into a comfortable condo they could actually afford. My father had taken a part-time consulting position to supplement his income, and my mother had even started a small online business selling handcrafted jewelry. They weren't wealthy, but they were genuinely making ends meet. Honestly, Stephanie had surprised everyone with her transformation. Still working at Westfield Architecture, She'd received her first promotion and was taking evening classes to complete her business degree. She lived in a modest apartment with a roommate, drove a used car she purchased herself, and was slowly building her credit score through responsible financial habits. Our family therapy sessions had been challenging, but incredibly enlightening. We'd uncovered patterns of behavior that stretched back generations. My father's parents had favored his younger brother, creating the template he unconsciously replicated with his own daughters. My mother's family had valued appearance over substance, explaining her discomfort with financial transparency. These insights didn't excuse the dysfunction, but they helped us understand and, finally, address it. Mark and I had established clear boundaries about future family financial support. We created a small education fund for Stephanie with specific conditions. She needed to maintain her grades, continue therapy, and demonstrate financial responsibility. For my parents, we offered matching contributions to a retirement account, encouraging their independence while providing a safety net. "It's time," my father said, appearing at the door. He looked different too, his posture more relaxed, his smile more genuine. "Ready?" I took his arm, and we made our way down to the beach where chairs had been arranged in a semicircle facing the calm ocean. Mark waited near the water's edge, handsome in his light gray suit. Our closest friends and family members turned to watch as my father walked me down the sandy aisle. I spotted Stephanie in the second row, wearing a simple blue dress, her hair loose around her shoulders. Our eyes met briefly, and she gave me a small, sincere smile, not the performative grin she'd perfected over the years, but something real and a little sad. The ceremony was brief and incredibly heartfelt. Mark and I exchanged vows we'd written ourselves, promising honesty, partnership, and growth. As we sealed our marriage with a kiss, I felt a sense of rightness that had been missing from our original elaborate wedding plans. This ceremony truly reflected who we were, not who we thought we should be. At the reception, held at a local restaurant overlooking the water, Stephanie approached me hesitantly during the meal. "Congratulations," she said, keeping a respectful distance. "Everything was beautiful." "Thank you for coming," I replied. "It means a lot." An awkward silence stretched between us until Stephanie took a deep breath. "I have something for you. Not a wedding gift exactly, but, well, here." She handed me an envelope. Inside was a business plan, meticulously researched, professionally presented, for a small graphic design company she wanted to launch after completing her degree. "I'm not asking for funding," she clarified quickly. "I just wanted your opinion as someone who built something successful." I was deeply touched by the gesture and what it represented. Stephanie was seeking my input as an equal, not for manipulation or competition. "I'd be happy to review it," I said. "Maybe we could get coffee next week to discuss it." Her face lit up with genuine pleasure. "I'd like that." Later, during the toasts, Stephanie surprised everyone by standing and asking to speak. Mark squeezed my hand as she nervously approached the microphone. "I'm not in the wedding party," she began, her voice trembling slightly. "And there are good reasons for that. But I wanted to say something to my sister and Mark." She paused, collecting herself. "Scarlett, you've always been my benchmark, the person I measured myself against and always fell short. It made me resent you instead of recognizing how much I could learn from you. What I've realized over these past months is that your success didn't take anything away from me. Your light doesn't diminish mine. It can help me find my own path." Tears pricked my eyes as she continued. "Mark, thank you for loving my sister, and for your kindness to our family, even when we didn't deserve it. And thank you both for giving me the chance to be here today, to witness the beginning of your life together." She raised her glass. "To Scarlett and Mark, may your honesty with each other create the foundation for a lifetime of happiness." After the toasts, while Mark danced with my mother, my father sat beside me at the table. "I have a confession," he said quietly. "I knew about your financial support earlier than you think. Not the extent of it, but I suspected." "How?" I asked, surprised. "The timing was too convenient. Our business troubles easing right when your company was acquired. But I didn't say anything." He looked away, embarrassed. "Because it was easier not to. I let pride and shame keep me from having an honest conversation with my own daughter." "We all made mistakes, Dad," I said gently. He nodded. "But we're finding our way now, aren't we? As a family." "Yes," I agreed. "I think we are." Our honeymoon was simple. A week at a quiet resort in the Caribbean where Mark and I swam, read books, and talked about our future. We discussed having children someday and how we would approach parenting differently than our own families had. "We'll make different mistakes," Mark pointed out pragmatically. "No parent is perfect." "True," I agreed. "But we'll be honest about them. No family secrets, no assigned roles, no financial deceptions, even well-intentioned ones. On our last evening, watching the sunset from our balcony, I reflected on the journey of the past year. The fake pregnancy report that had been meant to ruin my wedding had ultimately saved our family by forcing us to confront truths we'd all been avoiding. Stephanie's jealousy and my secret financial control had been symptoms of a deeper dysfunction that had finally been brought to light. When we returned home, I followed through on my promise to review Stephanie's business plan. We met at a coffee shop, and I was genuinely impressed by the thought she'd put into her concept. "This is really good," I told her. "Honestly, you've identified a solid niche, and your financial projections are conservative but promising." "Really?" Her face lit up with pride. "I've been researching business programs. I want to apply for my MBA after I finish my bachelor's degree." "I think you'd be excellent at it," I said, meaning every word. "Have you thought about applying for scholarships?" "Actually, yes," she smiled. "I've already submitted applications for 3 merit-based programs. Real ones this time." As we continued discussing her plans, I realized we were having our first conversation as adults. Not as the responsible sister and the favorite, not as the achiever and the screw-up, but as 2 women finding their way in the world, connected by blood and increasingly by choice. 6 months later, Stephanie was accepted into a competitive business program with a partial scholarship. My parents had settled comfortably into their new, more modest lifestyle. Mark and I had bought a new house with a guest room that had already hosted each family member for visits. The journey wasn't perfect. We still had disagreements and moments of falling back into old patterns, but the foundation had decisively shifted from secrets and resentment to honesty and genuine growth. The sister who had once faked a pregnancy to ruin my wedding was now someone I spoke with weekly, sharing advice and a true connection. The parents who had once unknowingly accepted my financial support now stood proudly on their own feet, with appropriate boundaries and transparent communication. As for me, I was learning that being the fixer, the responsible one, wasn't my only identity. I could be vulnerable, ask for help, make mistakes, and still be valued. The control I'd maintained through secret financial support had been an illusion that ultimately hurt everyone, including myself. Real control, I discovered, came from honesty about who we are, what we need, and how we show up for each other. And sometimes the greatest gift we can give our family isn't money or security, but the truth, however uncomfortable it might be. Have you ever experienced a family betrayal that ended up transforming your relationships for the better? My sister's attempt to ruin my wedding actually saved our family by forcing us to confront truths we'd all been avoiding. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more family drama and resolution stories like mine. Share this video with someone who might be struggling with family dynamics of their own. Sometimes knowing we're not alone in these complicated relationships can be incredibly healing. Drop a comment below about your own family karma moments. And thank you for staying with me through this entire journey. Remember, sometimes what looks like an ending is actually the beginning of something much better. Until next time, if this story shocked you or hit close to home, let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you want more real stories about betrayal, resilience, and reclaiming your power, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. Your support helps me keep sharing the truth, one story at a time.